Regular Show had 8 seasons and 261 episodes. I think it's safe to say that, in the end, it was no small feat, right? And obviously, with all that, the show had the chance to introduce many different and crazy characters throughout its run. From bizarre and not so important villains who appeared in just one episode, only to be defeated by the protagonists in 11 minutes, and that was fine, to secondary characters who were considered good friends and allies of the park crew, constantly helping them overcome complicated situations and escape the bizarre problems they always got themselves into. A good example of these allies were the Ducks. I personally really like them and think they're some of the best secondary characters in the entire show. However, today's video is focused on another specific character, who is, in fact, my favorite secondary character and has some very interesting points worth discussing. So, in today's video, I'm going to talk a bit about Deathfrom. It's a fact that Death didn't have much screen time. He appeared here and there in a few episodes, and honestly, that's pretty normal since he wasn't a protagonist and for the most part didn't have a huge role in the show. However, what's interesting is that even though he didn't appear often, whenever he did, his presence carried a lot of weight in the episodes, and it was very easy to feel that weight. It was as if he brought a crazy touch of danger that made the atmosphere a bit tense, but at the same time, he also had this interesting, different vibe that made me think he was a great character. To be honest, I ended up liking whenever he was part of an episode, even if he was against the protagonists. I'm not entirely sure how this feels for you, but it's very likely due to the fact that there was always this sinister aspect that followed him and everything he did. After all, the god was the personification of death itself, the Grim Reaper whose only job was to take the souls of mortals when their time came. So whenever he appeared on screen, he brought these unique and exciting elements that made me feel that imminent sense of danger, knowing that death was literally lurking around, and that was really cool. Now, moving on to another topic, if there's one thing I also find amazing about this character, it's definitely his design. Seriously, it's so good. Just looking at Death, you can already tell he was created to be a really tough guy. He's basically a skeleton with a bone beard, long rocker hair, and he walks around wearing jeans, boots, a black jacket, sunglasses, and accessories like chains and a skull belt. Honestly, I don't think a character dressed like that can ever be boring or lame. This whole bad boy design contributes positively to his presence because it's simply incredible how this awesome visual identity of Death perfectly matches what makes him one of the best characters in Regular Show, his sensational and unique personality. When you stop to think about it, Death even gives off a bit of a strange vibe for being in a show aimed at a younger audience, as he seems like he came straight out of a much more adult series. What contributes to this impression, besides the dark vibe he brings in his design, is his extremely distinct personality, sarcastic, with a bit of dark humor, a touch of cruelty, and practicality. Death always has that characteristic laugh of his, full of sarcasm, accompanied by ironic remarks, playful jokes, and teasing when he's challenging, confronting, or just messing with the park crew. You can even tell he has a lot of fun doing it. But the coolest part is, it's just that, even with everything I liked here, it still doesn't mean he's a villain, that he's 100% evil, or that he's hateful. What makes this character so unique is the fact that, at certain moments in the show, he's an ally, and at others, he's the villain. And that's it. Many times, you can see that he's not really an enemy. He's more like a friend who's on their side and even helps them. Some proof of this is, for example, when he brought Muscle Man's late aunt's engagement ring so that he could give it to Starla and marry her, or when he did Mordecai, Rigby, and Benson a favor by taking them to the underworld of punchers because Benson needed an autograph and a guitar to keep Millard from firing him. There was also the time he kept his end of the deal and spared Muscle Man's soul because Mordecai and Rigby took care of Thomas. And finally, the biggest proof that Death is more on their side, despite often being the antagonist of the show, is the episode Exit 9B, where the park crew has to face all the enemies they made during the first 3 seasons. And look, it wasn't a small number of enemies. They were, like, half a dozen facing an entire army. However, Death was one of the very few allies who came to help them, even though their chances of winning were, let's say, terrible. I think it's fair to say that the biggest motivation behind most of the things he does in the show is simply that it's his job, and Death is going to do his job at any cost. And to sum it up, I think what makes him my favorite secondary character is that, despite being given very different roles throughout the episodes, he still remains iconic.